Alright, a little introductory music to an introduction video for the dual credit math class that's known as Math of Personal Finance Dual Credit, or it might be called College Prep Math Dual Credit, but in CSN it's known as Math 95 and 96. This is a math class that's to help you get prepared to take the math placement test when you go on to college, whether it's CSN or UNLV or UNR, whichever school you intend to go to. You'll have to take a math placement test, and based on that score, not what grades you got in high school math classes, but based on that one test score, they will determine where they are going to place you as far as a math class so that you'll be properly prepared to enter that class and be successful. Now, if you score poorly on the math placement test because you're not properly prepared, then what happens is they put you in a lower math class. Sometimes they call those developmental math classes, where you have to pay for them, but you don't get any college credit. So they certainly want to try to avoid that. And not only is this class to get you ready for the math placement test, but hopefully also just to fill in some gaps in understanding. Because if you've had some trouble in your algebra classes, and let's say for example you had trouble with factoring, this would be a class that you would want to take so that you can fill in those gaps so you can get a better understanding, because factoring seems to be a trouble spot for many algebra students. So I have some just basic suggestions to be successful in this class, probably no different than any other math class, maybe a couple of exceptions as far as the differences, but the key is to stay current, to stay caught up. If you're not caught up, if you're falling behind, you're going to have trouble really to understand the material. And you'll notice here, I've noticed that you may notice here that I underline the word learn the material. Now, what I mean by learn the material doesn't mean what several students have a tendency to try to do in math classes and that here at Odyssey, and that is to just use whatever other resources they can find. Maybe they've got an equation website that helps solve equations, or they have a factoring website that helps them with factoring, or they use Desmos to use the graphing calculator at times when the graphing calculator is not supposed to be used. Perhaps it has to do with graphing lines or graphing parabolas. Because if you don't really learn the material, if you just kind of Odyssey learn the material, then what happens is you're not going to be prepared when you have to show what you know, say on a midterm or an exam, final exam, here I am, our final exam that you'll have to take when you're taking a dual credit class. They provide the exams and such, not by me, I don't make them up. They provide them from the Department of Mathematics at CSN, and if you're not prepared, if you haven't learned the material, you're going to have trouble being able to do these tests, because you're not going to be allowed a book, you're not going to be allowed your notebook, you're not going to be allowed your computer or your phone. You'll have paper and pencil, hour and a half, and there you go. You're going to have to do it, and it will cover either the entire first half of the semester or the entire semester. So if you don't take the time to learn the material as you're going through, it's going to be really difficult to do well in these. And the final exam alone is worth 20% of your grade. That's 2 letters. So I've had students that have had good grades going into the final exam, didn't really learn the material well enough, even though I reviewed with them and even though I gave them practice problems, and they ended up doing so poorly on the exam it dropped them down. They lost a letter, and in some cases they lost 2 letters on their grade. So you're going to have to make sure that you're ready for this stuff, and the best way to do that is start right at the beginning, learning the material, memorizing information, asking questions when you're unsure. If you don't ask questions, how are you going to be sure? I mean, you can always Google stuff, and you can find perhaps math forums and such that try to answer some of those questions. You can ask me or any of the other math teachers here at Odyssey. Now, there are different ways to approach this. One way is to use the textbook, which is built right into the class itself. There are also notes for each section, that is after the review chapter, the chapter 1 review. There are notes for each section that are there, that are links, and you can click on those and you'll see handwritten notes that not only go and give definitions and give theorems and give formulas, but also show you how to work the problems out so that you are not guessing at what kind of work needs to be shown. You know what kind of work needs to be shown and how to go about to learn it, so to make sure that you're ready for these kinds of tests. I also have every intention of making new instructional videos, this being the first one here, new instructional videos to give you an opportunity to learn the material. That again is after the first chapter review here. To give instructional videos to help you learn the material, and not real long videos. I'm going to try to keep them as short as possible so that they maybe cover 1 or 2 objectives in each section. Most sections have anywhere from 3 to 7 objectives. So you may have 2, 3, 4 videos for each section, but I'll try to keep them short, and then you can see which videos you need to watch based on the types of problems that you're trying to understand. And of course, the practice problems. There are practice problems that are in the textbook. The odd numbered ones are traditionally the best ones to practice because you can check your answers with the back of the book. And I have those on the website that you can check so you can make sure that you're doing them right, because if you can do the practice problems, then you should be ready for any kind of an assessment for that chapter or for that section. Now, as I mentioned, the first chapter is kind of a review. It's a combination of 2 chapters that are in the book, a review chapter, which is just like mostly arithmetic, and chapter 1, which is primarily pre-algebra topics. So all of this should be stuff that you're familiar with and that you've spent time going over, but you look through it all the same, and there's an assessment for that, and there's a video that's made up by somebody else that kind of covers as many of those topics as I could find. I didn't feel like making a video on pre-algebra kinds of topics because you really should know this anyway, but it's a good review. Now, if you look at this first chapter and you're saying, I'm not getting this, I don't remember any of this stuff, then you need to talk to me about it, and we can make sure that you're placed in a proper class, because you're in this class for the reason that you did well enough on your ACT test and did well enough in your other algebra classes that you should be able to handle this. But we want to make sure of that, so that's why we have this first chapter. Now, all the other chapters are primarily Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 topics. They dig a little deeper at times than some of the stuff that you saw in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, but it's pretty straightforward. And the assessment is primarily multiple choice at the end of each section, and of course at the end of the chapter. Now, you can't do the chapter test until you have completed all the sections of material in that chapter, and you have to score at least the minimum score for it to go on to the next section. Otherwise, it remains closed and you're stuck. You'll have to talk to me about that if that happens to you. That won't happen to you if you properly prepare, as I mentioned before, by doing practice problems prior to the assessment. Prepare for the assessments. As I mentioned, if you do poorly on the assessment and you don't score a high enough score, then the next section is going to be locked out to you. So you're going to want to email me or talk to me to see what's going on. There will also be some worksheets that will be mixed into each one of the chapters. You do print out the worksheet, you'll do all the work on the paper. And if you're not sure what work to show, look at my notes, because I have examples of those types of problems, and you can see the type of work that I've shown. And you'll turn those in to me either personally or just hand them to me, or you'll be able to scan them, take an image of them with your phone, attach it to an email and send it to me that way. So that way you don't have to make an extra trip. But you are to show your work on those. Okay, now, a couple things. Academic integrity. That seems to be a problem at times at an online school. Students allow other students to be able to go into their account and find their work and find their answers. And I'm on the lookout for that. We don't want that to happen. It's happened in the past, and I've caught students that ended up that I was able to show, because our tech department is able to look up exactly what IP addresses are being used and such by the student, and what accounts are being entered in by that student. I'm able to determine if there is any kind of cheating going on that way, as well as being able to see, for example, if work gets turned into me, and I see identical work, I see identical mistakes, 1 + 1 = 5, and it happens on 5 papers or something like that. So be sure to do your own work. Be sure not to let anybody have your account information so that they can go in and possibly try to copy off your section. And to help to make sure that everybody stays current, that everybody's doing their own work, you'll be given some quizzes. Not every single time, but you'll be given some quizzes on the current material. So if you fall behind, you're not going to be able to do the quizzes as well as you should be able to. And of course, I'm going to be able to see your work to see if you know what's going on. But by all means, take advantage of this class to really understand this so that it'll help you not only with your placement test, but for whatever math class that you get placed into, like a Math 124 or a Math 126, college algebra, pre-calculus types of topics. And so stay true to yourself and stay true to your work, and of course ask questions when you're unsure, and practice, 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 and best of luck with this class.